All right, we are back for another episode of the Bodybuilding Breakdown. I'm joined today by two very well-known guests of the channel, Bob Cicherillo and Ron Harris. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. How's it going? Bob, you've been busy
All
lately.
good, brother. What's up? What's up, Kenton? Another exciting week in the world of bodybuilding, I see.
Every week, man, every week. But you've been pretty busy yourself. Just got off the Olympia. You just traveled from Dubai.
Yeah.
You've been on the go.
Yeah, well, that's the business of bodybuilding. 1 week home, I'm actually off to Italy, my second home, in next Saturday. So 1 week from today, I'll be out there for Panada, of course, doing that business and generating hopefully new money, new contacts, new everything. So, you know what? It's amazing to me as we'll dovetail into the what's going on in the world of bodybuilding. But, as I'm out on the road, I'm all over the world, doing the business of bodybuilding. It never amazes me how short-sighted some of the people that are basically stuck in their basements doing podcasts, how short-sighted they can be when it comes to what goes on in the game, what goes on at the shows, people that have never made it out to shows. It's just a constant battle, but it does kind of amuse me. I got to be honest.
Actually, I just finished a podcast with Eric Janicki, and admittedly, I've been one of those guys the past few years. It's definitely time that I start getting myself to some of these fucking shows. I've got the Toronto Pro that's in my sights. Yeah, June coming up, and then the Olympia the following year. I'm putting it out there now. 2026, I will be at the Olympia.
Nice.
Yeah, we're talking
100%.
Actually, I might be making a return to the Toronto Pro. Actually, so that's some negotiations in the works. So.
Fantastic. Some good competitors I know that are going to be at that one this year. Absolutely. Ron, I wanted to ask you, how's your shoulder feeling after the surgery?
Oh, it's fantastic. I just met with my surgeon last week. He's very happy. We did x-rays. No pain. I mean, I'm in less pain. I have more range of motion in that shoulder than I've had in 15 years.
Wow, look at
Pressing
that.
strength. I had a full replacement, Bob, and
I know.
I should have done it 10 years before. I should have done it long ago. I waited too long, but better late than never. And very, very, if anyone out there is on the fence about it, just get it done. Just get it done.
Well, Ron, you're one of the few guys out there you still live the bodybuilding lifestyle like to its fullest, man. Like I know you're still doing 6 meals a day. You're still in the gym 5 days a week. Like I know it.
Yeah, it's silly. I'm 56 years old, but I'm still. I know this is going to sound awful, but my schedule does revolve around going to the gym and eating all those meals. I do, try to make a living around that, but well, I'm just so entrenched in the lifestyle. Like I love eating that way and training that way and trying to maintain the best physique I can at this age. Yeah, it's an addiction, but it's what makes me happy.
It's why you're doing as well as you're doing, man. I mean, that's why I know at least one of the clients that you have, and I mean, he's doing very well. You can see the
Davey.
progress.
Now
Yeah,
you must.
Davey Mize, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's doing really well.
Yep.
Well, we had a couple of things go on the last few weeks, but the most recent one being the Poland Pro. You guys catch that?
I just caught up with that a little bit today. I see Andre Presti punched his ticket for his fourth Olympia. It's funny because certain people, I know Akeem Williams was also in that show, and Akeem's been one of those guys that every year seems to just pick the right show, which is a show very much like this one, and usually ends up in the winner's circle. And he's one of the first people to always qualify, and then when we get close to the Olympia, say, oh, how did Akeem, qualify? And you think, oh, that's right, it was last year. He came up a little short this year, I see in the fourth, but Andre Presti, again, qualifying for his fourth Olympia over, and I'm still not sure I got his name right. I don't know if it's Johan.
Johan.
Help me out, Ron.
I was corrected many times by people in Spain. Johan, it is Johan.
Okay, so yeah, usually the J is silent in my teachings around the world, but so Johan, I tell you what, man, this kid's good. He's a big kid. I was honestly a little surprised. Now, again, we're not there. Yes, it is different in person, everybody, and definitely different at the judges' table. On paper, on video and pictures, this kid wins all day long, but apparently not the case in person.
Yeah.
Well, I think it came down to conditioning was the big thing. I saw the higher resolution photos, and I mean, Presti was just he was shredded, man. You know, he had the
Yeah.
detail from the back, especially over Joan. He had the quad detail, although he didn't have the size in the quads that Joan had, without question. I mean, the shape of this young guy being 27 years old, ridiculous. If he had been even a couple more points conditioned, I think that he would have been going home with the win. But
Yeah.
Andrea Presti, being the veteran that he is, showed up in shape, and he's going back to the Olympia. Ron, I think you did a breakdown on it. What did you think?
Yeah, they both had their flaws. Presti's got pretty lackluster triceps. His quads are even worse, but his torso, shoulder width, delt caps, chest, back, very thick. Condition, he was in much better condition. I still thought if I was a judge, and this is why I'm not a judge, I guess, I would have given it to Johan. He's got the limbs over him, better arms, better legs, better to me, just a better overall flow. It's a more complete physique, but conditioning won. So good for Andrea going to the Olympia for the fourth time. He's just a
You know,
kid. Give this kid time.
you know who impressed me? I'm sorry I don't have his name. The kid in third place was actually
Pablo.
Pablo Lopez,
very
yeah,
impressive.
Yeah, he's
he
also
was.
young. He can't be much older. He's probably younger. Another Spaniard, Pablo Lopez.
Pablo,
Yeah,
that's it. I tell you what, very impressive. Maybe the most complete out of the top 3 or 4.
Yeah,
And I could see this kid going places over the next year or so.
yeah. A little more
but I've
size.
been watching.
He's got everything. He just needs a little more size.
Yeah, I've been watching him put on that size the last 2 or 3 years now, I would say. You know, he's been very active. He's been out there competing, and now he's starting to get to the point where he has the size. He's keeping the midsection, and the conditioning factor is something he was always pretty much on par with. From what I've been seeing this year, is what I've seen from him previous years, maybe a little bit better, but he just puts on a little bit more muscle overall, and he's going to keep doing well.
I guess one of the questions at hand is concerning Akeem and all this because, like I said, Akeem traditionally has been a guy who he's been in what 4 or 5 Olympias and always seems to pick a right show and wins a show, qualifies, gets in there. But this time he ends up out of the top 3, and I can only wonder if this signals that he's on the back 9 of his career and potentially that maybe we don't see Akeem make it back to the Olympia this year.
Because he was top 6 a few years ago.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. But in this last Olympia, he didn't place.
And he
So
did
yeah,
well at the Arnold. Well, what was it? Last year he did really well at the Arnold as well.
he was top 5 in both Arnold and Arnold UK, wasn't he? If I remember.
Yeah.
So maybe this is just a fluke or a glitch year. Maybe he'll be back, but time marches forward for everybody. He's been a pro for about 15 years now.
Yeah.
It's been a good run. So if he does retire, I mean, he's got nothing to be ashamed of. Most guys never win a pro show. I always say
Right.
most guys never stand on the Olympia stage. He's done all that.
Well, like you said, Ron, here's a guy who represents the old guard. And when we say old guard, we're literally talking only a handful of guys left. Right? You've got Akeem, you've got William Bonac, and Brandon Curry, who we have seen the best Brandon Curry we've seen in quite a few years since he actually won the Olympia title. I thought he was placed a couple of spots too low at the Olympia, and that seems to be catching a little bit of groundswell now as people are reviewing the videos and the pictures. But a very good Brandon Curry, he's still bringing it, but he is also part of the old guard.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Now, Bob, you saw Akeem at the Olympia. You've seen him every Olympia. Did you see a difference in Akeem this year compared to what you've seen previous?
Akeem from the side can hang with anybody on the planet. He's that good. He's that thick. He's a big boy. He's got a lot of muscle mass. The problem with Akeem has always been traditionally from the back. His front and his back are different. He looks better from the front. When he turns around, he loses a little something. He's got that thick skin in the back, almost like a Lionel Bayecki type of thing going on there. So he's gotten away with it. But as we tend to get older, as me and Ron will attest, these things tend to get supersized. Weaknesses become weaker, strengths become a little bit diminished. So I did see some pictures from the Olympia. I'm up on stage and close to these guys, but till you can really get a better view, in post show. You got to kind of reserve decision, but his back seems to have taken another half a step back, which is not unusual. Given that he's got to be 40 or close to it, if not.
Yeah.
So these are things that just happen, and you can see a little bit of recession, almost Big Ramy-ish type stuff going on there. That can be from a whole bunch of things, just wear and tear. Nerves get damaged over years of heavy pounding, and he's a strong guy. I mean, he can put up some good weight. So, yeah, I've seen him. He's lost a half a step or so, but he's such a good guy, and I hope a guy like that can go out the way he wants to go out.
Yeah. Well, I know that Akeem trained very, very hard for this Olympia. Like he specifically spent a lot more time in the gym than he did previous years. Coming off of it, he said he felt really good, but it seems like maybe his physique is a little bit tired after all that heavy training. Like you said, Bob, being 40 plus definitely is going to take its toll. I know that in some of the pictures that I saw before he competed at the Poland, he had himself with the KT tape, trying to basically hold himself together so he could try to pull off another victory to rest up for next year's Olympia. But yeah, I do wonder if he's going to make it back there again. I mean, when you look at what's coming up, he does have more opportunities still this year to compete, but I don't know. We know that Andrew Jack is going to be in Romania, so if that's one that he was looking at, then I mean, probably going to have to continue to look on a little bit further, right?
There's
Well,
only one more show after that to qualify for this year.
right. It's
Yep.
it does bring up another question. Me and Sean, talk about this all the time on our VOB, and that is the ends and the means. So let's take Akeem for an example, or a John De La Rosa we had discussed last year. Just because you qualify and you get back there, is it the right move? Like in Akeem's case, like this year, he qualified last year, obviously, and got himself back to the O, finds himself outside the top 10 where, you're picking up a check for a couple of grand, which is basically paying a few expenses. But overall, you're losing a pretty good amount of money in prep, time certainly, and effort, which is monumental. Like you just said, Kenton, here's a guy who spent even more time in the gym, which means you're spending time away from other things, business, family, whatever you got going. So the question now becomes is like, okay, well, even if you make it back, is it worth it in terms of, if it's your first year and you get to the Olympia, God bless you. Listen, you should absolutely go, taste it, step on stage, say you did one, just in case, God forbid, anything happens in the future. But he's a veteran. He's been in there, I don't know the exact time, 5-6 times he's been to the Olympia. And now you start to find yourself where you're not cashing in. You're not a contender. You're filling a space. And does that become worth it? Does the luster kind of get worn off? Or is it something generally, even if you did qualify, you decide I'm going to just bypass this and make other money going to other shows or guest posing or seminars or whatever your business of bodybuilding is?
Well, let me ask you that about Andrea Presti, because I have a feeling that you and Sean discussing that on the VOB, I feel like Sean would look at a guy like Andrea Presti and tell him, "There's no point in you stepping on the Olympia stage, man." What do you
Well,
think?
knowing Sean as well as I do, Kenton, yeah, yes, he would absolutely. If you ask Sean right now, he would say, "Shut it. Listen, good for you, kid. God bless you. Don't bother. You're going to put a lot of time, money, and effort into a show that you have almost no chance of making the top 15." And now, is he wrong in that? It's like, well, it depends on how you're looking at it and what it means to you individually. Now, to some people, I guess, just saying I qualified for my 4th Olympia, or I'm going to compete in my 4th, 5th Olympia, 6th, whatever, that's enough for them. Whether it's for future consideration, whether it's just, a check mark off of your list of, your bucket list, type of thing. Being that we're older and we've been there and done that, especially Sean, who did 12 of them, I believe that he was in the top 5. You take a different approach to it. You tend to look at it differently and more of a business rather than an achievement. And I think that's where the difference comes in. And a lot of that, I do believe, is based on age, how many times you've been there. And listen, like I said, this stuff ain't cheap. I mean, it costs money to get ready for any show, least of all the Olympia.
Well, Andrea Presti can probably still make some money. He can capitalize off of just stepping on the Olympia stage again, probably, right? Walking away with the Gilco Productions videos, pictures, say personal coaching, business, something like that, right? I would imagine that it's probably still a way to capitalize.
Well, and that's a fair point, right? Does it do anything for your business? Let's say you're a top trainer in your area, and that's a feather in your cap, right? Hey, four-time Olympian. Hey, I've been on the Olympia 5 times, 6 times, whatever.
Yeah.
So you can take that approach also, which is, okay, yeah, I'm not going to cash in. It's probably going to cost me some money, but in the long run, it's an investment into my own self, my own brand, and my own training, business and how you work that with your clients. So, like I said, to each their own and all that. Sometimes it's not about the money. I've been on record for years saying the only thing every bodybuilder on this earth has in common is nobody ever got into this for the money.
But speaking of the money, I mean, I don't know his sponsor situation, but if he has sponsors that are willing to pay everything and,
Yep.
Paid well, he's got really nothing to lose because he's representing them. He's representing Italy. The Italian fans love having one of their own athletes up on that Olympia stage. Yeah, does he have a chance of being in the top 10? No, and it's never going to happen.
No.
Not unless there's a plague that sweeps through pro bodybuilders. But he still looks great, and if he's going to be able to present himself, probably doesn't get to pose, right? They only let the top 10 pose at the Olympia.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Judging is probably the only time he'll get a good look. But like I said, we don't know his motivations, and maybe that's enough for him to get to Olympia. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. You said, if you qualify for the Olympia, if you had the opportunity to stand on the Olympia stage, there's no way you're making top 10. Would you still do it? I'm sure every single one of them would be like, oh, hell yeah, of course, it's the Olympia. I'm going to go to the Olympia.
Yeah, top 10 is just getting more and more stacked. And look, from what we're seeing post Olympia this year, we're not even into 2026 yet, right? You look at what Martin showed up with at the Prague, right? I can only imagine
Right.
what Andrew Jack is going to show up with at the Romania. These are not guys that are getting worse. These guys are getting better. Even look at, like you said, Bob, Brandon Curry.
Yeah.
Nobody expected Brandon Curry to show up like he did. Nobody. A lot of people, like you were talking about post show, checking pictures and videos. So many people out there saying that Brandon Curry should have defeated Nick Walker. Now, what do you guys think about that?
Well, you already know what I think about that without even asking. So that's an easy one. But in all seriousness, Brandon Curry, Antonio, I believe, in my opinion, both deserve to place above Nick Walker. And the irony of all ironies, I do believe, again, all joking aside, not trying to be snide, not trying to be a smartass, I do believe Nick should have placed 8th at the Olympia. And you could have made a case for even lower because, again, the two guys in 9th and 10th were also formidable. So Nick clearly not at his best. We can get into that in a few minutes, and there's whole lots of stuff going on with that. But Brandon, arguably, somebody put up some pictures of him this year versus 2018, I think, when he won, and it's comparable. I mean, you could make a case that he is not far off his form from when he actually won the Olympia. Granted, different show, different place, different lineup, different lighting, different judges. We get all that, but he's still bringing a formidable physique. Now 5+ years later. And I think rightfully should have placed a little bit higher. Antonio Burton also, I think if you isolate just those 3 gentlemen, Tonio, Brandon, and Nick, and you compare just those pictures, I don't think there's any question.
Ron, what do you think?
Yes.
Brandon, Nick Walker, who should have placed higher?
I would have had Brandon ahead. I mean, Nick, he's got all the muscle in the world. He's a monster. And even though him and his coach his coach, Kyle, was talking about the conditioning. I thought his conditioning wasn't an issue at all. Conditioning was right on. It's just that midsection is so thick, and he doesn't control his gut breathing. So many times I saw that gut relax and sticking out, and Brandon still has. It's crazy because they say it's the older guys get the Palumboism, and they get the big, thick midsections and the limbs shrink. But I'm seeing Nick's midsection just gets thicker and thicker and thicker. I'd love to see him downsize a little bit and trim that down because when he first came on the pro scene back in 2021, 2022, 2022 when he was third at the Olympia. I show that footage a lot because he was so much better, so much more of a V taper. You know, when Bob made that the H frame or the H shape. What'd you say? He's got an H frame.
Yes,
H shape,
yes.
man.
I mean, it's getting there. And when he puts his arms straight up, it's just a block. So, and Brandon still has a beautiful, beautiful shape, and even his legs looked a little better this time than I remember they've been in years. Since they've always knocked Curry's legs, but this was a better Brandon. You don't see guys in their 40s coming back better. It's so rare. That's why when I saw him, I was like, wow, okay. Because people are saying, oh, wait till you see Brandon. Like, yeah, whatever. Everybody says that. But he comes out, and I think he's 43 now, 40, 43, 44.
Probably about right, man.
Yeah, he's getting up there. He's been doing this a very long time. So I was so happy to see the best version of him, because typically guys after 40 just get worse, 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 and then they're gone.
Well, one thing Nick has, and this isn't a knock on Nick personally, because every bodybuilder, as they get older and they get closer to 40 and over 40, faces the same thing. There's a reason Masters competitors look like Masters competitors. And generally speaking, they're a little bit wider in the midsection. Like you say, the limbs start shrinking, the arms start going down a little bit, the leg sweep seems to start, ebbing down, So even the guys that had those features, as they get 40-ish, 41, 42, 43, very difficult to hang on to that type of stuff. The problem with Nick is he's got two of those problems, and he's only in his 20s, I believe. Is he even 30 yet?
He might be 30.
30, 31.
Let's call him 30. Okay, he's a young man in this game. The problem is he's got two of those problems, which is the midsection, which obviously has been an ongoing problem, and he does not have a lot of leg sweep. His thigh insertions actually start very low on his thighs. I don't know, a lot of people don't pick that up, but if you know physiques, you look. And the reason he doesn't, like, you get those guys that got that high insertion, like it looks like their thigh starts out of their hips, and they got like Sean
it makes that roundness.
Example of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean Roden had a beautiful sweep coming right out of his hip pocket. Nick doesn't have that feature, so he's got those two things to contend with. The death knell for Nick, I felt, was during the season when he said, well, two things. One, he shaved his head. Automatic mistake. If you ever watched the story of Samson, from years ago, not our Samson, the biblical Samson. Don't ever cut the hair, boys. Doesn't help. He just ended up looking like the Thing. And but when he said the words, and Ron, I know will agree with me 100%, because we have heard this a million times. When a bodybuilder says, I put on X amount of muscle, I think Nick said 6 pounds or 10 pounds or something like that. You can that's as bad as uttering the phrase, I'm in the best shape of my life. The second you hear it, you know that this is not going to be the best you've ever seen this guy. But the last thing Nick needs to do is put on any more muscle. If you look at the comparison shot, somebody had a great comparison shot of 2021 versus 2025 of Nick. And the only thing that gets bigger is his waistline. He actually looked more impressive a couple of years ago. Not that that's unusual, because most pro bodybuilders look best when they either just turn pro or their first year into it. And then progressively, the only thing that gets bigger is their waistline, and they start losing some of that X frame. So my advice to him are simple. Take a step back, take some time off. I would not go in the Arnold. I would not go in any early show. I would actually pick probably the last qualifier of the year for Nick. Get ready for that, and then boom, right into the Olympia.
Something like Texas or something, maybe. Yeah.
I think just the last show or whatever the last two shows of the year is, that's what I would focus on if I was running Nick's camp, for two good reasons. One, he has like a lot of the big boys, and even though he may not be tall, he's still bigger than a house. They have a bit difficult time peaking for two shows in a year. It's difficult. We're going to see who ends up going, putting their name in with the Arnold hat. But listen, we just saw this with Samson. I did not think it was a good idea that he put the title up for grabs, so to say, when in the Arnold. Now he's got to peak for 2 times, and he ended up in 4th place. Did that have something to do with it? Well, we don't know. Derek, now I hear, is going to go in the Arnold. He might be following in the same footsteps as Samson. It's like, A, I would not suggest that. B, I would not put the title up for grabs. And C, now you're going to be in that whirlwind vortex of, I get no rest at all. I got another year of prep and dieting and gear and all that stuff, and that could cost him the title come September.
Well, to me, this is the only downside of all the money that we're suddenly getting, is now these guys they can't bypass the shows. They
Right.
should skip the Arnold logically if they want to win the Olympia again or win it for the first time. They should go into let their body clean out, rest up. But now, $750,000. Olympia's
Right.
mid-October. What am I going to do? There's no time. There's very little time to clean out before now. You got to start prep again in early December for the show that's the very beginning of March. So good thing they're getting more money, but it's encouraging them to just run themselves ragged too.
Well, in the case of Samson, let's just take him for an example. Last year, again, I thought it was a bad move. I was adamant against it, that this guy should just be out there being Mr. Olympia, waving your hand, doing your appearances, making your money, right? And then go defend your title. But give yourself a much needed break, which he hasn't had ever, really. So the one thing you buy when you get that Olympia title is you buy time. You buy some much needed rest and time. You don't have to qualify. You can take the year, which nobody else can do. So that's the advantage that you get as the champ. He kind of took that advantage and threw it away and said, that's okay. Listen, I want to compete. I'm going to go for that title. I'm going to go for that money, and I don't mind putting the title up. Okay. The question now becomes, guys, is did the pursuit of, 500,000 this year, did the pursuit of 500 cost him 600 and the title at the Olympia?
It's possible. It's possible. In fact, looking back, I would say it's likely. Given what we saw from Samson and the attitude that Samson took out of that Arnold Classic, Samson, he goes back to the gym and he puts it all on the line, man. Like he puts his whole heart into it, and almost to a detriment, I want to say, working with such extreme force, no taking anything away from the guy to an extent when it comes to just driving himself into the ground to bring that conditioning that the judges always said that they wanted from him. Fouad did a podcast and he said that at like 3 weeks out from what he saw, Samson was ready. And I'm sure he was ready well before that. But Samson just said, I can dig deeper. I can go further. I can go further. He dug himself into a hole, and we still didn't see that renewed physique in Prague. It was better, but not as good.
This is what we call in the world of bodybuilding is the law of diminishing returns. Now you can have that warrior mentality, and that's a great mentality to have. That football, I'm just going to go in there and kick ass, and I'm going to outwork everybody. Here's the problem: the reality is you're not. Okay, your body can only take so much. Your receptors are gonna not be responding as you keep going. Okay, you're going to need more and more and more to achieve the same result. That's going to be a problem down the road. Dieting is going to take its toll. Mentally, physically, financially, again, these are all things that come into play. Now, that said, everybody's got to, you got to go with what you think gets you there, but you have to have, I would like to see more of a mentality. Unfortunately, trainers, as such, coaches, whatever you want to call them these days, most of them don't have a business mind of this stuff. They don't want to take a show off. Listen, they don't make as much money if they take a show off. If their guy catches in, chances are they have some kind of a revenue split or a percentage they get paid. So they're pushing. The athlete himself has to be smart enough to put the brakes on. If I was running Derek's camp right now, I would tell him absolutely do not go in the Arnold. Don't do the same thing Samson did. Don't put your title up on the line, even though it's not the Olympia title. Let's face it, guys. You get beat at the Arnold, any other show, you got beat, right? I mean, kind of takes a little of the shine off your Mr. Olympia victory because you just got beat. Guys who should go in the Arnold, absolutely. Hadi Chupan was the only guy smart enough last year to not be on stage all year long, and it almost and arguably almost gave him another Olympia title. That could be debated some other time, but he's still fresh. He should go in the Arnold if he can. Martin is on a roll. Absolutely should go in the Arnold. He's an instant contender, can easily win that title, and he's young enough and fresh enough that he can do that. Andrew Jacked, again, another guy arguably could have won the Olympia. In my eyes, this guy very easily could have been Mr. Olympia this year. He's got every attribute that there is, but another guy who needs to strike while the iron's hot. Samson, Derek, and Nick, I would absolutely not suggest going there for two for the same reason, and Nick for the reason I just outlined. Give himself a break, get your body back to specs. Let's see you later on in the fall.
Yeah.
I think Ronnie Coleman did something toward, I think it was most of his Olympia career. He took an entire 3 months off after every Olympia, didn't train, didn't touch a weight for 3 months,
Yeah.
off all the gear. I don't even know if he was on TRT, ate like
No.
3 meals a day, everything just reset, recovered, rebooted, and then he could hit it hard. He'd start training again like February or something, January, February. And then he would go all the way hard through to the Olympia. You could say, well, Ronnie's all messed up. He probably would have be more messed up now if he didn't
Yeah.
do that. I mean,
Well,
he's still with
Ron,
us.
you've interviewed one of these guys from back in the day. Lavroni used to do the same thing. He wouldn't step in the gym for 6 months. But it was very common back then for guys to take off 2, 3, 4 months, let their body clean out, let the receptors kind of revive, so to say, get that, that hunger back, right? The old stay hungry, moniker. And but that seems to be a lost art. And like you said, there's a good and the bad. Great that the money's up there, 750 this year at the Arnold. That's life-changing money. Let's face it, $750,000 plus. However, again, do the ends justify the means? Is the pursuit of 750 worth losing your Olympia title or putting your body in a position? Because we've all heard Ronnie, Jay, and everybody else from that era say the same exact thing. All the big men would not do it again. It was the hardest thing I ever did, and it either cost them the Olympia title in their mind or almost cost them the Olympia title.
Yeah, that's right. Dexter Jackson used to be famous. He would take 4 weeks off. He would tell people, do not be afraid of time off. After the Olympia, 4 weeks, solid. Nobody does that. Absolutely nobody. It's funny though, Bob, the announcement that Derek is going to be doing the Arnold Classic. I mean, Derek told you at the Olympia on
Yeah.
Sunday, the Sunday seminar, that he was going to do time with family. So now suddenly we've got this announcement, Tarek El-Gindi saying that he's going to be stepping back on the Arnold stage. I mean, that's a little bit strange.
Well, I did hear Tarek make it. I haven't heard Derek make that announcement. Now,
Nor me.
he did say at the seminar, because I asked him straight up, and I assumed I answered kind of my own question as I was asking him, so I figured, well, he's certainly not going to put that title up, for grabs, right? Like, again, he just saw his buddy Samson do the same thing, took advantage of it. Good for Derek, not so good for Samson. So will he follow in those same footsteps? Has he had a change of heart? Listen, he's probably feeling on top of the world right now, which I can absolutely understand. I think he has to take a step back. Nothing's in stone right now, even if he did say, yeah, I think I want to do it. Again, what's the risk to reward ratio here? If he goes in, let's just say hypothetically, Derek goes in, Samson goes in, Hadi goes in. It's the same crew, right? And Andrew Jack go in. So your basic top four contenders all go in the Arnold. Now, in a likely scenario, if I had to pick somebody right now, based on what we just saw at the Olympia, okay, and all the hubbub that's going on afterwards, right, of who liked who and who got screwed and who did this and who did that, Derek would be my least likely pick to actually win the title. I would actually pick probably Andrew Jack or Hadi Chupan to win the Arnold. So could he do a Samson? Could he go in the Arnold, Derek this is, and take second, third, or even fourth? All those guys are interchangeable. They've all beaten each other, right? So, for the most part. So is the risk worth it? Again, is it worth putting your title up for grabs? Let's just say he takes a third at the Olympia behind, let's just say Andrew Jack and Hadi take first and second, and he takes third and Martin takes fourth. Make sure this is being recorded just in case that happens, Kenson.
We got it.
Right? Now you're in third place there. Now what do you do? Well, now do you go to Pittsburgh? Because you're like, well, so you know what? Hey, I'm going to go defend my title at Pittsburgh now. That's another $100,000 in my. Again, it's just you can see the same cycle kind of brewing, and that's not a good spot to be in. And Samson could be in that same boat if he goes in the Arnold. He could take a listen. You can make a case for any one of those names I just mentioned, and tag in Martin Fitzwater. They could all beat Samson there.
Yeah, these guys, there's nowhere for them to go. There's nowhere else for Derek to go. There's nowhere else for Samson to go. These guys are Mr. Olympia. The only place for them to go is back on the Olympia stage, fighting for that title. it's a different standard when you hit that Mr. Olympia. Martin has somewhere to go, you know? Martin is on a roll right now, and Martin still has substantial improvements as a young guy that he's still making, you know? Andrew Jack, not in the game long enough to the point where he cannot still be making substantial improvements as well, and has not been Mr. Olympia. I like that Sampson was a Mr. Olympia that was continuing to compete. You know, I was a big. I really enjoyed seeing our Mr. Olympia getting out there doing shows because it was such an anomaly compared to previous champions. Right, for years we didn't see that, but it does come to a point, like you said, Bob. You've got to know when you're at a point of diminishing returns. Derek needs time off and Sampson needs time off, especially Derek. Derek needs to figure out what he's going to do to get back in the good graces of the fans of bodybuilding, short of stepping back on stage, because Derek is not a well-liked Mr. Olympia. Typically, you see this after you win a few titles. People don't start to like you, Phil Heath-esque, right? That's not the case with Derek. Derek is not a well-liked Mr. Olympia right now.
They like people love big arms. People love big peaked biceps.
Right.
I see the majority of the shit people talk about Derek Lunsford. You know, we've all seen that picture of him with the double bicep with Andrea Shaw in the front double bicep, and her arms are way better. Her biceps are way better. You know, it's stupid. It's not an arm contest, just like it's not a shredded glute contest. But think about Larry Scott, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie, Sergio, all these great Olympia champions we've had over the years. Just phenomenal arms, and the front double bicep shot was just jaw dropping. And that's the first shot you see. And so many people keep putting that one picture up, and his front lat spread is not great either. Yeah, I mean he's not a universally loved Mr. Olympia. I don't know when the last time we had a Mr. Olympia that everyone was happy with. I can't even. We'd have to go back about 40 years or so.
Big Rami 2020. Big Rami 2020.
Okay. Yeah,
maybe,
like I say, but that answer is never. And listen, we all get that. It's the world of bodybuilding. That's cool. But I will say this: I was just in Dubai, okay, at two events out there. So now, granted, it's the Lions Den, because if I had $1 for every fan that came up and wanted me to say "Howdy Choo Pan," I would have a lot of dollars. Trust me, boys. But he's very popular in the Middle East. No question that he was the favorite. Again, I kind of get that out there, but not too surprisingly, it was Andrew Jack. And now, even though he trains out there in Dubai also, he had as much, I would say, as much fan base out there thinking he should have won. Derek was in a distant third. And I'm just going by fan appeal, fan.
Yes. No, you're right.
Response.
You're right. That's what the fans are saying. You're right. Yeah.
But going back to what Ron was saying, which is a great point, the front double bicep is the hallmark of the physique, right? If there's one pose that epitomizes the physique, okay, it's the front double bicep. I don't think there's any question about that from anybody. That said, when you line up the top 5, even 6 guys, and when I say 6, even though Nick plays 6, I'm not putting him in there because this wouldn't benefit him either anyways in this scenario. It's very conceivable that in that front double bicep, you got Derek in 4th or 5th. I don't think there's any question, because Hadi has a better front double bi. So does Fitzwater. So does Jack. So does Sampson. Even though Sampson wasn't dead on the money, it's still a beautiful pose for him. And then you can make a case for Curry or even Tonio in that. Now, Nick, like I said, that's why I excluded him out. That's probably one of his worst poses. So wouldn't help him anyway. But when the guy who wins the title isn't in the top 3 of that pose, I know it's not a single pose competition, but that is the hallmark pose, right? To me, they're not all equal. A side try or a side chest is not equal to a front double bi. It just isn't.
I agree. The front double bi is the first one. I mean, aside from when you first come out and do your quarter turns, that's the first shot. That's the impression shot. And when you've got one that everybody notices, my eyes went to Andrew Jack, as it always does in that front double bicep, when they had that first call out, And from there, Andrew kept shining through. You're absolutely right, Bob. That is the first pose that really makes the impression on the fans. And if you can really nail it, or in contrast, if your first pose is very weak, it's a lasting impression through the entire round.
Ron, I'd be remiss if I didn't liken the front double bi to the bench press as it comes to exercise. Nobody in the history of the world has ever asked anybody what they do other than what do you bench? And when they ask for a pose, nobody asks for a side tricep or an ab and thigh, right? Hey, let me see. They want to see the big arms, right? That's it.
That's right.
Said that I at least 9 times out of 10, when the lineup comes out and they hit the front double bicep, I can pick the winner
Yeah,
90% of the time off that one pose. Sometimes they turn around, the back's not great, and that's why they lose. But
it's true.
you see the shape, the structure, the mass. You get an impression of so many of the attributes they have or don't have in that one pose. And I'm just curious. I wonder why Derek's biceps look like that. Like, why aren't they better? Because he's a genetic freak, obviously. Got the crazy
Trains the
back.
hell out of them.
It's
He does.
it just doesn't compute in my head. His biceps should be, if he had like Nick Walker's biceps,
Yeah.
now we're talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told Lee Priest, get a hold of Derek, or Derek to get a hold of Lee Priest, rather. Get an arm day, okay? Just pound the shit out of that for the next fucking year, and you'll hopefully have the arms, right?
Interestingly, it's just, I think it's a combination of things. Like Larry Scott obviously never had a peaked bicep. Lou Ferrigno never had a peaked bicep. Very similar, in what they are. Now, he's very much shorter than a Ferrigno and even shorter than a Larry Scott, who wasn't, probably more than 5'8". But I think it's just a combination that's just the way it ends up looking. Now, we all get it. Like, okay, yes, it's not just a single body part and all that. And is it that bad? And the answer is no, it's not that bad, but it is bad in comparison. I was just, again, out in Dubai with Phil Heath, our good friend, 7-time Mr. O. He still has better arms than anybody that was currently up there. And he has competed in years, but he's got fibers in his arm. Like when he flexes, you can see lines in his bicep. He's got basically striations in his biceps. Derek's never had that, even if you go back to when he won the 212. So even at 210 pounds, he didn't have that. It's literally just the way his biceps are. The question is it enough to take him out of the driver's seat? And I think a lot of people think that you could have put Hadi Choopan, or again, my pick of Andrew Jack in there very easily.
Yeah. I'm right there with you when it comes to Andrew. I would have had no problem with Andrew taking home the Olympia title because he was a standout. You can go back and forth with Derek and Hadi, but Andrew just stood out. You could argue conditioning could have been a little bit better from the back compared to those two. Ultimately, I think that's part of why he didn't take the win. I would have had no issue. And there were a lot of people on my live stream that were saying the same thing.
At least would have gone bonkers if that guy had won. Bonkers.
Oh,
right.
Well, he'll probably end up taking the Romania. I don't know who else could possibly jump in to challenge him in the Romania. Martin maybe, but I don't think Martin's going to do that. So I would say that, that's going to be coming up here soon.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that Martin would. I mean, listen, he's had a hell of a run. If he's smart, and again, taking the advices, now take a little time off, because right now is the only time he's got to take a little bit of time off if he's going to do the Arnold, which I would highly suggest because he's a contender. And listen, Martin has made enough stride. If Martin, I tell you what would have been an interesting scenario. If Martin had looked at the Olympia, like we just saw him in Prague, it would have been real interesting to see where he might have placed, because as I've been saying for months and months now, if Martin looked like that at Pittsburgh, or what he looked like at the Olympia last year in Pittsburgh, he beats Nick and Derek at that show. So unfortunately, that was a miscalculation for him. And circling back to what we started with, boys, Martin had that same exclamation, Ron, of, I put on 10 pounds this year. And the minute he said that before Pittsburgh, I said, that's it for Martin. Probably going to see the worst Martin you've seen. And I'll be damned if he didn't show up off and missed a golden opportunity to put both those guys in his back pocket and be a front runner going into the Olympia. Luckily, he regrouped. He dropped that weight. Just because you put on 10 pounds, listen, that equals what on stage? A pound? Maybe a pound and a half of pure muscle tissue. So what looks good in the gym doesn't look good on stage necessarily. Every competing bodybuilder figures that out along the way. But Martin's a big question mark. Can he beat a Hadi Choopan? Can he beat Derek? And I believe he can beat any of those guys if he comes in 100%.
Yeah.
He definitely would have beat Samson at the Olympia. Yeah. I thought he should have beat Samson at the Olympia, But had he looked the way he looked in Prague at the Olympia, no question he would have been fourth, and Sampson would have been fifth.
Yeah, I would say so. But these guys are. I think that there's a path forward, obviously, for Martin. His path is set. Derek and Sampson, I think that their path should be set when it comes to taking time off. Andrew Jack going on to do Romania, getting his qualification. Absolutely. Now, Nick is the guy that doesn't have that path. Bob, I know you mentioned him doing a later season show. I agree. I think that would be a good move for Nick. But
yeah,
you also mentioned Nick's camp and what he should do. Nick doesn't have a camp right now. Nick is coachless. Nick has split with Kyle Wilkes. And in a very public situation, unfortunately, I feel for both of them. I'm sure that everybody has seen now that, Nick had his opinion of his look at Pittsburgh and New York and said he didn't like the look. And then Kyle went on the Unracked podcast, and then Nick went on Fuad's podcast, and Kyle, regardless of, who said what about who at this point, Nick is going to have to choose another coach. Nick isn't going to do it by himself. So who is it going to be? I mean, Nick can do his rebound. I'm sure he's like, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But within the next month or two, Nick is going to have to start working with somebody if he reasonably wants somebody to know his body by the time he hits the Olympia stage, or next time he takes a stage, like you said, Bob, later in the year.
Sure.
Who's going to want to work with Nick at this point? That's something that I was thinking about, What top-level coach, because I presume he would go top-level at this point, would work with Nick Walker, given the relationships that he's had with coaches, for better or for worse? Bob, what do you think?
Well, you know what? Interesting premise, Kenson, because it does bring into play, like, as a coach, guru, whatever you want to call him, do you want to put yourself on that chopping block? I mean, you've seen now he's burned through a few. Everyone seems to end badly. So for whatever reason that is, I don't know. I mean, listen, maybe he breaks the mold. Maybe he doesn't use a coach. Is it necessary? I mean, listen, maybe he would have done better if he did what he wanted to do. Or, and this is where it always gets dicey with a coach, right? Because every athlete you talk to says the same thing, right? They say, well, there were things he wanted me to do I didn't want to do, or there were things that he suggested that I didn't ended up doing it anyway. So now it always puts the question in your mind, well, maybe you would have done better if you actually listened to your coach and you actually did what he wanted you to do. Now you always have to question, well, did I screw myself up by not listening, or would it have been worse? And the problem is forever now we'll have a question mark behind that, because you don't know, because you picked a certain direction. Your coach, picked a different direction than what you wanted to do. So I don't know. I mean, that's a real good scenario, but I would be hard pressed as a coach that I want to throw my name in that hat to go, look at, I wish him the best. I got nothing against Nick, but count me out. I don't want to put my head on that chopping block of, if it doesn't go right, he's going to blame me.
Ron, can Nick coach himself? Why not? I mean, when Quinton did it this year, Quinton looked really good. Tampa and Texas, he looked good at those two shows, Tampa, Texas. He looked pretty, at all the shows. I thought he did at least as good a job this year coaching himself as any of these previous people have coaching him. I mean, it's not rocket science. You do have to know the chemistry and all that, but Nick, I've spoken to him a few times. He's a bright guy. He's smart enough to handle it on his own. I would love to see him try it just to see, but I don't think the coaching it's the issue. It's this chase for size. If he could come to terms with, I don't need to be bigger. Bigger is not better. Better is better. Everyone's showed all these before 2021 and 2025. Right. If he sits down and goes, you know what? These people it hurts to hear all that, but they're right. I lost my V taper. He never had the prettiest physique in the first place, but it was prettier a few years ago than it is now. It's getting lockier and that gut is just getting bigger. If he can streamline that back down with whatever, if he knows what the impetus was, what caused that midsection to blow out the way it has, and if he can reverse that, because we saw Rolly Winkler do that a few years back, it can be done.
We did.
Rolly had a bubble gut and then he got rid of it. If Nick could do that, but yeah, what top level coach? It's funny because you see in the comments, everyone thinks this one coach is going to be the savior. Like, he needs to work with Chris Aceto, or he needs to work with Boss. Why that particular coach? Why do you think that one coach is going to be, the holy grail for this guy. Yeah, I'd love to see him try it on his own because maybe he'll do an awesome job and look better than he had. But I thought he looked fantastic in Pittsburgh. I thought that was a great look for him.
Well, he oddly enough, he didn't like his look in Pittsburgh. At least that's what he's saying now, which is bizarre to me because it's like, well, wait a minute. In New York, you said you were at your worst, right? When the year before, not this past one, the year prior, when Martin arguably should have beaten him. And Nick's response was, well, if you can't beat me at my worst, what makes you think you can beat me at my best? Okay, listen, that's fair. I'm in for gamesmanship and all that stuff. Makes the world go round here in the bodybuilding channels. However, that was a worse look than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a better look, right? That he almost beats Derek. Now, Derek, interestingly enough, pretty much said the same thing. Listen, I wasn't at my best. I was at my best at the Arnold. I wasn't at my best in Pittsburgh. Hey, Nick, if you can't beat me at my worst, what makes you think you can beat me at my best? So it's kind of an interesting scenario of how this played out. But the fact that Nick now says he didn't like his physique in Pittsburgh, I'd like more clarification on that. What didn't you like? And if you didn't like that there, what made you think you were going to like it at the Olympia? So now, granted, that's not a great time to be changing people, coaches, whatever. Be honest, guys, I would love to see it return to a day that coaches are less and less used. I think they muddy the waters more than they help. Quinton is a great example, Ron. Perfect analogy of a guy who got absolutely decimated by a coach the year before when he showed up in New York and he looked like a swizzle stick. I mean, he lost every bit of muscle he had. If he stuck his tongue out, he looked like a zipper. And then all he did was say, you know what? I'm done with coaching. I'm doing my own thing. And you saw a guy with a series of second places who easily could have won one of those shows. But a much, 50% more improved physique. Quinton's a name that you're going to see this year coming up in the winner's circle, and he'll be on the Olympia stage. Great up and comer. But I'm not sold on the coaches thing. They can help. I think they hurt more than they help most of the time.
Well, let me tell you, Quinton recently did a guest posing as well, like just in the last few days kind of thing. He looks ridiculous. He's still
right?
in very respectable condition. It looks like he has really filled back out. The quads look like they're gaining the size that they need in order to catch up to the upper body. I am very encouraged by what I saw from Quint Beastwood, let me tell you. He is keeping things tight, and absolutely, he is doing it on his own. He's doing it on his own. He is paving the way. He's the modern day pioneer of a top level athlete, because I believe he is going without a coach, and perhaps more should consider that. Maybe Nick is a prime candidate for that as well. Nick was doing podcasts with who is it? A buddy of his, Danilo. They had the Ginger and the Giant podcast, and it would be more than once, more than twice. I heard it from Nick. Kyle would send update pictures to Kyle, and Nick would be a meal or two in, within the last 8 weeks of his Olympia prep, and wouldn't hear anything from his coach. So look, clearly it wasn't a good fit for anybody. There was multiple layers to that. For Nick, it might be figuring it out on his own. Maybe that would be his best play this year. I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
Honestly, there's something to be said. You've just using my own circumstance. I mean, it took me forever to turn pro. 13 years from the time I actually went to a national show to try until I eventually won the USA. And Ron knows my story because he's done articles on me. Thank you, Ron, for many years. But the bottom line was this. When I was young and stupid, I didn't know nothing about nothing. I trained. It was the simplest program you've ever seen. Gear, as we've talked about, you got what you could get your hands on. I didn't have any money back then. I'm a 20-year-old kid. You know what I mean? But, barely making ends meet, right? So it wasn't like there was any big drug protocol or anything like that. It was a low carb, low fat, high protein diet. It was the simplest of simple. Okay. I hit it blazing. I mean, from 87 to 91, 92, I'm kicking ass and taking names. And I don't know nothing from nothing. All I know is what I do works, and it's simple. And honestly, people always say, well, what happened? Why did it take you so long? You were the next big thing coming up and all that jazz. Absolutely correct. What happened was I started getting smarter. And because I wasn't winning, back then, yes, you had to win the overall. It wasn't all that crap like today, but still, Then I started using other people. Then I started using coaches because that's when that started to come into play. And with each successive coach I used, different program, oh, no, you got to do this, you got to do this, we got to. Now we muddy this thing up with the most complicated, ridiculous thing I've ever, and I just got worse and worse and worse. Now, even though I ended up getting my shit back together and using a coach in George Farah years later, the program was almost identical to what I started with in 1987 at the Nationals, where I took the fifth in my first one. Simple, easy, to the point, didn't have any of this muddied up stuff in there that all these other coaches wanted me to do. And, I finally got that pro card, and, and the rest is history. But more complicated, more, quote, sophisticated is not always better. This is not rocket science, guys. Bring those carbs down. Everybody wants to know why the bodies look better in the 90s. Because you know what? Because we didn't do any of this horse shit that you guys do now. We weren't counting macros. We weren't adding all these ridiculous fats into there. Oh, it's healthy fats. There's a bullshit. Listen, we were eating sawdust and garbage for, for 12, 14 weeks suffering. And that's what I don't see a lot these days. I don't see a lot of suffering. I don't see that thin skin. I don't see the separation of the muscle groups. They're training too heavy. They're on the gear too early. So bottom line, guys, is I'm, back to the coaches thing. I'd love to see these guys do their own thing, take it a step back. And not too coincidentally, most guys look better as either amateurs or, like I said, first years as pros before they start getting coaches.
I wrote Hani's column for years for MD. Hani turned it, that's why he was called the pro creator. He turned so many guys pro. And I'd say 9 out of 10, I get the same percentage I use for everything. 9 out of 10 of them look their very best the day they turn pro, and they never look that good again. Because they all want to, now I got to get bigger, I got to do this and that. And
right.
They complicated things. Kevin Leverone used to diet on fish and broccoli. That was it.
Yep.
I think that was every 6 meals a day, white fish and broccoli.
Jay Cutler too. Same thing.
Yep. And 2 hours on the stepper every day. And, it worked. It's simple.
100%. It'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing. One last thing I want to ask, Bob. I wanted to ask you about the press conference at the Olympia this year. What kind of feedback did you guys get on the press conference this year? Changed up the format again, and it's something that a lot of people did take note of, it being a different format yet again this year.
Well, I'm all for change. It's very close to something I wanted to change it to. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it's a step in the right direction. I thought we were a little rushed for no good reason. As far as I'm concerned, people wait all year for this press conference and the Olympia in effect. But I wanted more time. Like first of all, I would this is just my own 2 cents, okay, on this stuff. There's other people obviously that we work with, Olympia people and all that stuff. I would have started it an hour earlier, with the first hour being like the Legends type of thing. We had Chris Bumstead, we had Flex Lewis, you've got other names you can put into there. I think you can build a whole hour into, like I say, a Legends type thing, or superstars, Phil Heath, this guy, that guy, which I think would be a great delight for the audience. Seminar type of deal. But it's like the warm up, right? And then let's just say that's at 11. At 12 o'clock, boom, press conference. Thank you, Legends. Let's move on to, our press conference now. I've always wanted like a Tonight Show setup, like with the desk. Give me a mug with the Olympia logo on there, that type of thing. And I would kind of shuffle them in, kind of, again, very similar to what we did, but a little more extensive. And I tell you what's the missing jewel out of the whole weekend is that Sunday seminar. I think Sunday should be broadened to an entire day of post-Olympia stuff. And it's far more valuable than the press conference, because that's the only time that we have results. We did the show, we have results, we have winners, we have losers. This guy got screwed. This chick, didn't like the other one, and she ended up beating her, and this and that. You got a shitload of stuff to talk about on Sunday that you don't have any of that stuff on the show, because everybody's going to do the best that they can do and bring my best package and blah, blah, blah. So, there's only so much you can do with a press conference. So again, we're kind of getting there. Again, with a few simple changes, I think it could be far better. But honestly, to me, the Sunday is the crown jewel that we're missing. Also, I've also suggested I would almost the press conference I would have is more of a real press conference where you literally only have a few people that's speak about anything per se. Kind of like a prize fighting type of thing. It's Thursday night during the Meet the Olympians. I would turn that whole thing into a media night. Can the big music and all that stuff, bring that down and pipe that down a little bit. You could have a whole stage full of interviews and things and stuff. And the athletes are right there. They're all right there. You know what I mean? So signing autographs, doing their things, bring up a few on stage, do some interviews. We could run it just like you would run a TV show with commercials and everything else and pump this out to sell pay-per-view numbers. That's my suggestion, but what do I know?
You've only been doing it for 20 years. Yeah. Look, I think there was some golden missed opportunities for the press conference. The whole point to build excitement before the show. Derek and Nick didn't even get to step on the same stage and have words exchanged with each other. Nick had a coach to himself. It looked like he was going to lie out and fall asleep on that coach, man. He looked so comfortable there. That was unfortunately a missed opportunity. I'd like to see something. It doesn't have to be exactly similar. And this is the sentiment of what I'm hearing from a lot of the fans too. The way that it used to be with the 3 or 4 levels of tables where you would have multiple athletes to be able to, get in front of each other and gives you more ability to, ask questions back and forth, people playing off each other as well, Bob. Something that includes more of the athletes, I feel, would be something that the fans would be especially in favor of.
Well, I wouldn't go back to that. I think it served its purpose at the time. The reason I didn't like that is we'd have like 30 athletes up there. And they're falling asleep. I mean, honestly, you got to sit there.
Okay.
And, you know what I mean? See, this is not ideal because it's before the show. Anybody who's ever competed, especially at that level, can attest. That is not the time you're at your best. I mean, listen, I'm pulling teeth out there trying to get responses and things and stuff. Then you've got other factors involved. One, you don't want to leave people hanging. So it's my job, and has been, for 20 plus years I've been doing this now, to highlight all these athletes. So you don't want to leave anybody hanging. You don't want to dismiss them, even though we have, favorites, obviously, like back in the day, you had, Phil versus Kai versus, Ronnie and Jay and Gunther and whoever, right? So yes, you got to go to them a little bit more, but you don't want to leave anybody out. Then you've got foreign athletes, some of which don't speak English. Well, guess what? Going to come to a screeching halt when I go to somebody and you got the interpreter and the whole thing just kind of takes a big dive to, even if you had some excitement going. So there's challenges with that. That's difficult to overcome. I'm not in favor of having 20, 25, 30 people up there at the same time. I think it's boring. I think they all there's no reason for them to all sit through this thing for 2 hours when they're dying. They got to go to the bathroom. They got the water jugs are there. The chicks hate it. The women absolutely hate it. They don't like it at all. They didn't like it then. That's why we got rid of it for a time. They just assume the guys do it. Listen, they're not going to be talking smack. They much rather, they got hair and makeup and things and tanning, and they got a lot of things to prepare for when it's the day before they're going to be on stage. So again, I think a hybrid is a good idea. I don't mind. I'd bring them up in smaller groups. Again, very similar to what we did this year. I would take it one step further, and I think that would be a real good plan. But again, not to belabor it, but Sunday I would be looking at expanding it. Same format, but much deeper and in depth. And again, you've got winners and losers. Much better conversation.
Yeah, that's all fair to say. That's all fair to say. Ron, you think you're going to make it to the Olympia 2026? You going to be there?
I have to check the dates against the date of my daughter that they're doing their vow renewals for 10 years married. They're doing it in Sydney, Australia. That's where my son-in-law's from. And I know it's we're going to be there for 2 weeks in October. And I don't know if it's going to, I got to check the dates because now I'm thinking I might have to, even if I could go to the Olympia, I can't miss this. My daughter will kill me.
I did hear, it's not confirmed, but I did hear that they're going to move the date up and eventually even move it back into September. So that might help you out a little bit. Again, not confirmed,
Nice.
just something I heard through the grapevine, but I have no problem with it being earlier, September-ish. I think it's a great time. So you can continue your streak, Ron. It wouldn't be an Olympia without you there.
I mean, I miss the days when People talk crap, oh, Blackman and MD, whatever, but you know what? He sent me to every Olympia. He sent me to every Arnold, every New York
Yeah.
Pro, Tampa Pro, Chicago Pro, on to Toronto Pro. I mean, I got to go to all those shows. And now if I want to go, I have to pay for it myself. And I don't like to pay for things for myself. I like other people to pay for them.
Right. I got no problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. They're changing venues too, Bob. Is that right? Are they going to an arena?
That would be ideal. I have been a proponent. I am not a fan of theaters for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, you have a limited amount of seating. Yes, the seating is better in terms of a show, but there's a lot of there's advantages and disadvantages. But as far as I'm concerned, an arena, and I wouldn't be opposed to the Olympia moving all over the place like they do with the World Series, the Super Bowl, right? It's in a different city every year type of thing. If you're in an arena, the beauty of an arena is they're all the same. Every arena is almost identical, okay? So you can have the same format, the same seating, which is much easier on our Olympia people. God bless Angelica, because I know she works very hard. When you've got different venues, different things, it messes up the entire thing because you've got VIP seating that you now have to separate from regular seating. And no matter how you do in a theater, bro, it's not the best because somebody who paid a good chunk of change for a VIP seat is right in front of somebody who's in a regular seat, so to say, because it's a theater, right? You can create that space in that division and all that in a arena. And listen, an arena is good for a million things, right? Right. If it works for wrestling and Madonna and any band type of thing or that type of stuff, it's the same format. And if you need more seats, you push the stage back. If you need less seats, you can push the stage forward. But, we were doing close to 10,000, and the last year of AMI was 10,000 strong in an arena. And that's impressive. It's impressive. I can tell you guys firsthand to come out on that stage and there's 10,000 people staring at you, waiting for something profound to come out of you. Is nerve-wracking and very cool all at the same time. But, yes, we will be in Vegas from what I understand, but at a different venue. Hopefully, from what I'm hearing, the Orleans Arena would be a great pick. And listen, people, stay wherever you want when it comes to the hotel, because I used to hear, it's funny, people got short memories. When we were at the Mandalay Bay, people bitched because it was so expensive back then. Then we went to the arena, and then they're like, well, it's off the beaten path. It's like, look, you can go to Vegas anytime you want throughout the year. If you're coming for the Olympia, then that's where you're going. The inside of the Orleans Arena looks like the inside of any arena on this earth, whether you're in St. Louis, Chicago, Florida, or Dallas, Texas, okay? Doesn't make any difference. So I hope it does go back to that. I think it'd be a much broader format. I think we can expand. We can get back to having 10, 12, maybe even 15,000 people at the Super Bowl of bodybuilding. That would be my wish.
Yeah, no, I would love to see that. I'd love to, more people. You can get more people into the venue. I mean, you'll sell the seats. I have no doubt that the seats will sell. It was sold out this year.
Well, listen, it's just logistics and numbers, right? If you can put 10,000 people in a arena, I don't care what arena it is, that's 5,000 plus more people than you can fit in the current theater that we were just at. Now, I'm no mathematician, but to me, that's an extra 6,000 people that are also going to your expo, going to meet the Olympians, going and buying merchandise, right? Going to meet the superstars, enjoying the Olympia experience. You just simply can't get around those type of numbers. And I think that's where we need to start going over the next, 4 or 5 year plan. It's interesting because, our sport is very unique, and I call it sport. That's debatable whether it is or isn't, but, for another time. But we need, in my opinion, more of a season. And I've been advocating this for some years now, now we have kind of a unique format, but I wouldn't mind seeing almost like a split season. The early shows and the later shows. Maybe there's a break in the middle of the summer in there somewhere. But it's spread out, for 10 months of the year, we have competitions. Now, just like in any other sport, right? Everything has about a 6-month season, so to say. Football, baseball, hockey, basketball. They're all about a 6-month format, and then there's basically 6 months off. Now, the reason I suggest this is it's very difficult. Listen, one of the things we're discussing today is whether the best guys that we have in the game Samson and Derek and this one and that one, right? Should or shouldn't go in arguably the other biggest show of the year. And it's a valid argument because it makes an impact on whether you're competing in March, which means you're basically dieting almost already, right? We're already in November, January, December, January, and February, but you're dieting already, okay? Now you're expected, so from January until October, you're dieting, pushing, the gas pedal all the way down, blah, 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 right? It's not the healthiest thing in the world. We all get that and realize that. So in the interest of the betterment of the health for the athletes, the sport itself, the qualification process and everything, I would love to see eventually, and that would take a couple of years, but again, can we get kind of a split season? Can you get shows and tighten them up where these guys can hit 2 or 3 or 4 shows and then take a break, or choose on which one? Like I'm choosing as Nick's new manager. We can break that news now, kind of like in the Apollo Creed Rocky type format, or so I'm running Nick's camp now. He would be doing the later shows. You wouldn't do any of the earlier shows. He would do the shows after the break. Let's say that break is in, I don't know, June or July or something like that, right? And now you've got the later shows where you can hit 4, 5, 6 shows like Quinton did. Quinton did it smart. He picked the later shows and boom, 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 boom. He hit those shows. Guys in the early part, again, you get a little bit of a break. You're not just hammering it, for 6, 7, 8 months. So it's just an idea, but I think I would not mind seeing that type of a format, being changed where, again, maybe we can move some shows left and we can move some right. And it creates, again, what I call a split season for guys to, be able to make money, to be able to compete. If you can compete at the Arnold, and let's say go to Fuad show the next week, and then go to the UK Arnold, and then you could hit 4 shows in 4 weeks. You could do it because you can hang on. But what you can't do is hit the Arnold and then wait 6 weeks and hit Pittsburgh, and then wait another 5 weeks and hit New York. You see what I mean? Like, that's a problem for a bodybuilder.
Ron, what do you think about doing a season like that?
I think the issue would be the fans they always want shows to follow, and we need this constant stimulation. If like months and months go by without shows, people get really antsy. They start making up gossip just to keep themselves entertained. So, but for the health of the athletes, that's a great idea. Sure. Absolutely.
Well, I think it would bolster, again, guys being able to compete in 2, 3, 4 shows. Great. Good for everybody. Get the superstars out there. What do you do with that other time? And the answer is you promote the sport. What does any sport do in 6 months that they're not out there? We have other sports that we can watch, but what do they do? Listen, we can be bolstering. I think shows should be just that. I think the competition is in the prejudging. I think the show at night, the finals, should be more of a show. Maybe there's things that we add in there. Maybe they're more entertaining, because let's face it, we're all in the business and we can't sit around. How many times have we been out in the lobby shooting the breeze? You know what I mean? We're not even watching the show because it's like, oh, I can't sit there for, this type of a thing. Let's build things in. Think WWE, Monday Night Raw type of a stuff where there's entertainment and there's things going on. Think guest posers. Think contract signings. Hey, guy just won and qualified for the Olympia. Have Jake Wood come out there or Dan Solomon or something and whip out a contract on the spot and say, hey, you in for the Olympia? Sign it right now. Or you got a rivalry between, Nick and Martin or, whoever, right? All these things I think can be explored and made way more fun if night shows are made into actual entertaining shows. Prejudging's done. Judging's finished. Let's have some fun and let's sell some tickets.
You'd have to find a way to make it engaging for those of us watching at home, and I think that there could be ways to do it. Like you said, contract signings, guys showing up, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
When you talk about things like that, there could be a way to do that. But I tell you, sitting at home, sure, even going back to, like you were mentioning about the press conference, having the legends that showed up. You had Flex Lewis, you had Phil Heath, you had Chris Bumstead. Right. Most people just wanted the athletes to get on stage, right?
Yeah.
And when you're at home, that's what's going to be expected. When you're in the audience, what I want to hear from Phil Heath, what I want to hear from Chris Bumstead, yeah, most definitely. So not that it would have to be the be all end all, but you'd have to find some sort of a balance.
Sure.
But no, I think you're right. There could be some sort of a balance in there. When it comes to taking time off, I think that you would have to have conversations with promoters. I think they would be difficult conversations. I think that it would be probably messy for the first season or two of trying to figure that out, frankly. But you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right? Could it be better for the athletes? I think that it definitely warrants more conversation. Could it be better for the sport in order to bolster it up and find new ideas? Yeah, I think that there could be possibilities there.
Well, one problem as you see, going through this past year, just use that as an example, we only have so many superstars to go around, and they can only compete so many times. So again, a more entertaining format where you can have some of those superstars in attendance, and that's why I suggested, like in that press conference, start an hour early. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, give people the opportunity. If they want to come early and see the superstars, great. If not, 12 o'clock, boom, start time. Here's your 2026, lineup, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But again, there's only so much talent to go around. And what we end up with is shows that, quite frankly, just being real, somebody's going to win a show and qualify that it isn't really that great, right? Or maybe they shouldn't even be there. And now we've got a format where some people are going to get in there on points. Now, even though I know that's a necessity, because yes, we do have, like, this year was brutal. I mean, we had 60, 70 people on stage at, a few of these lineups and stuff, which is just insane. You know what I mean? So yes, something has to be done. Glad the Pro League took this approach. Going to need some tweaks, going along the way, but that's cool. We can fix things as we see there's an issue or a problem. But I am all for, like I say, and yes, it would be, I don't want to say a mess, but it would be challenging in the first year or two to squeeze some of these shows left or right. Most of the time, a promoter has some leverage. It just depends on what's available. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, can you put your show on the 18th? That would put you a week after Pittsburgh, Yeah, let me check. You know what I mean? Okay, well, if this guy can move his, and then this guy can move his, again, somebody can go to the Arnold, the Pittsburgh, New York, Fuad show, this show, but at least they have an opportunity to make some money, make those, and it becomes more like a circuit, where they can go out and do that. They used to do this in the old days with the European circuit after the Olympia, where they had 4 or 5 or 6 countries that are next to each other, where they had like the Denmark Pro, the Italy Pro, the German Pro, and they would do this tour and they would go around, and it was pretty much the same guys. And it worked very successfully. So it can be done. It would just take some planning.
Do you think it would be on the IFBB to kind of say, this is the block of time when no shows happen? That's it.
Yeah, because ultimately they give the sanctions, right? So if they just said, look, we're not going to sanction a show, and I'm just picking out a show, June. Okay, there's no show in June, okay, or whatever, or whatever. Maybe that's just overseas, because we do have overseas shows now that have come up quite prominently. But like I say, you do need somewhat of a little split, we'll call it, whether it's just there's only a couple of shows, there's no shows in this 6-week period, whatever. But you've got to give guys the opportunity to hit multiple shows that aren't spread out, or no sport on this earth has a season that's 10 months long. None. Sure. Other than golf. I check that back, but that's a whole different animal.
That is fair. That is fair. I mean, athletes can generally, I think, pick with the amount of shows that take place. You might look at it and say you have to have that long of a season because there's just so many shows as compared to, so many games played in whatever it might be, hockey or baseball. It might be equivalent.
That brings up the question is, are there too many shows? Why do we have 70, 80 people? And I get the money trail. Trust me, I've worked in every aspect of this business. I've had a promoter hat on. I've been the athlete's rep, much to everybody's chagrin, not even self-appointed. I work with the Pro League. I've been an athlete. I've checked all the boxes. So I get it. Sanctioned money, promoter money. Listen, and it trickles down. Listen, Ron will be the first to tell you, he would get sent to shows to cover these shows. Photographers go there to take photos and make their money. The tanning people go and they make a good amount of money tanning people for the show. So there's a lot of bodybuilding community that makes their living on shows. So I get all that. But all I'm saying is can you contain them a little bit more? Again, a little bit left and a little bit right, where it's a little bit more advantageous to the athlete, a little bit healthier. Again, you can kind of pick or choose. You want to go in the the first set of shows again, the early shows, or you want to go in the late shows. Give them the opportunity. Again, Quinton's a great example of a guy who took advantage and hit what 4, 5, 6 shows in probably as many weeks. Great.
Yep. Yep. And he could have done that earlier in the season as well. Those shows did stack up, and we did see athletes do that, right? You'll see it. Well, I know Eric Janicki, he said it on my show coming up. There's going to be the Legion, then there's going to be the California, and then there's going to be Toronto, 3 in a row, and he's going to hit them. Those are like a mid-season type thing, right? You could do that when it comes to later season shows as well, like we see Quinton do. So I guess trying to take time off for the athletes to block out a section, a lot of athletes, they should take that time for themselves without it having to be mandated by the IFBB. And a lot of them probably do kind of by default, I guess, more or less. So again, there'd be logistics that would have to be worked out there. Could it work? Possibility for sure. Definitely possibility. But there'd be some logistics. Like you said, just with promoters, who's going to give up their time slot and money and athlete. There'd be a lot. There'd be a lot for sure. But interesting conversation as always. Having both of you guys on, I always really enjoy it because these are the interesting conversations in bodybuilding that you just won't get anywhere else. So look, I really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you for joining me. But we've been coming up on an hour and a half. I think we'll wrap it up there. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. So I just want to tell everyone that Kenson is going to be on my Meathead podcast this Wednesday night, live at 7 p.m. on the Ron Harris Muscle channel. So if you want more Kenson, you just can't get enough of them, tune in Wednesday live at 7.
Yeah, that depends on who you ask.
There's a whole bunch of guys out there that want a piece of Kenson these days. So yeah, they can't get enough.
Yeah, popular dude.
Fuck. That's when you made it, right?
Welcome to our world.
And of course the VOB media channel, Bob's channel, Voice of Bodybuilding. I'll put the link to Bob's channel in the description below as well as Ron's. But yeah, again, appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You got it, Kenson. Anytime, buddy. Good seeing you, Ron.
All right.
You too, Bob.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Bodybuilding Breakdown. Catch you guys in the next one.